much for coming out today. Today's meeting, we're going to be talking about the best way to have a well-rounded application, and we're kind of going to be using PTCAS as a guide for that. But before we get into anything too crazy, I'm going to pass it over to some guests that we have today. Super excited.
Hi, I'm Colin. I'm the president of another student org here, Aztec Adaptive Sports. Maybe you've heard of us. So we do a lot to support the adapted athletics organization on campus through volunteering and stuff. And we're just kind of going around on November 15th. Adapted Athletics is hosting their lift-a-thon, so we're spreading awareness for that. And then Amanda here is our lovely secretary for the club as well. So what is adaptive sports? If you can just raise your hand if you've heard of adapted sports before. Okay, love it. Okay, so anyone with a physical disability can compete. If you've heard of the Paralympics, parallel to the Olympics. Yeah, so we have some of our lovely athletes up here. Our Coach Roland there, who's a guide runner, Alicia, Christian, and then our community athlete there, Hamudi. Okay, so what do we have here at SDSU? We have wheelchair tennis and para-track and field. We have a mix of student athletes and community athletes, so a little mix of both. And then what we're kind of looking for this lift-a-thon is some support financially in a way, but we're not asking anyone to donate. SDSU Adapted Athletics is situated under associated students, so they don't get like money the sports teams get. So they have to do their own extra fundraising for things like scholarships, competition expenses, coaching and mentorship, physical therapy, nutrition, and all their equipment. So it's a big cost. And then you're like, oh, competition expenses, like what are those? What are those really going towards? So our teams are pretty well developed. Our ambulatory track and field team has 5 Team USA athletes, 2025 USA Para Track and Field National Championship athletes. So we had 6 athletes go, 1 American record, 10 medals, 3 athletes selected to World Championships, and then since this slide has been updated, Alicia won shot put, bronze shot put in F64, so that's like her division. And then Max, who's not pictured here, he's a community athlete, won silver. So big deals there. And then wheelchair tennis, so we have California's first collegiate wheelchair tennis team. We got some new athletes this year, so expanding. And then in 2024, they placed number 2 at collegiate nationals. So if you're kind of like, what's this adaptive sports program? They're doing big things. Some of our athletes. And then, so, big call to action, November 15th, we want you guys to show up. Basically, the donations work that we just want people to come and lift weights, as many reps as you can lift in a minute, then donors contribute like per rep lifted. So total reps are like 2,000, then we get however much the donors donated per rep. So it's a big way to just get a lot of money for them. And all you gotta do is participate or volunteer, and it helps out so much. Okay, so here's how you can participate. There's 2 challenges. We have para bench press, so you're just doing a bench press, but your legs aren't on the floor. And then squat of choice, front squat, back squat, and then, like I said, 1 minute AMRAP, many as possible. And then we have 3 divisions, so you can choose your weight category. If you're like, oh, I can only do 65, that's fine, as many as you can in a minute. Yeah, and then so we have prizes for each division, this little QR codes where you can sign up. And then if you're like, I don't really want to lift, or they get filled up because we have 12 spaces per category, then you can volunteer. That's really appreciated. We need people to spot, help check in, scorekeepers, and then info table, just tell people what's going on. So any help is appreciated. You can sign up to volunteer on this form. Believe they close, volunteering spots close early November. So please sign up. It's a really cool event. It's gonna be a DJ. Yeah. And it's going towards Thank you guys. Oh my god, sorry. So if you know anyone who wants, anyone who owns a business that wants like a tax write-off, wants to sponsor, let us know. You can email us at SDSU Aztec Adaptive Sports. Yeah, we're looking for donors. And then questions, if anyone wants to take a picture of that. And I believe last thing, If you want to get involved, you like what you see at the Liftathon, you like the type of volunteering, Aztec Adaptive Sports is a great club for that. We're super easy to join. You don't have to be like, oh, I have to choose between FPTO and Aztec Adaptive Sports. No. We're like 8 points to be active members. You get 3 for volunteering. So you're halfway there almost if you show up and volunteer at this event. Yeah. Okay, now I'm done. Thank you guys.
Awesome, yeah. So for FPTO as well, you can get half a point if you are a participant in the Liftathons. You can get half a point if you volunteer. You can also do both, get 1 point. Then of course we have our point opportunity to be a member in a different RSO, so that would count for this as well. So that would be half a point there. Jumping into some upcoming events. On Wednesday we have a resume workshop on Zoom. The RSVP for that is in the newsletter. That will be from about 5 to 6 p.m. That will be led by our lovely Allie over there. Get excited. And then I'm gonna pull Jake in to talk about service really quick.
What's up, you guys? So we have Feeding San Diego this Friday. Spots are unfortunately full right now, so thank you to those who filled those up. It's going to be 2 to 4 this Friday. There is a ride sheet in the newsletter for those who are signed up and are looking for a ride. And the main thing I want to talk about today is the breast cancer walk that's going to be happening on Sunday the 19th at 9 a.m. For those of you that don't know what it is, it's through an organization called Making Strides, and they get a bunch of different RSOs from here and just other people. They all go out to Snapdragon Stadium, do a big walk around that area. It's a great event. So what we're going to do for that is we have a team similar to Dance Marathon. We're going to do a half a point opportunity if you decide to raise money. It's going to be a $25 minimum. We're going to send out some social media flyers and things that you can post on your Instagram to do that. We're going to do it where if you get a certain amount of money, you can do some sort of dare, like doing a TikTok dance or jumping in a pool, something like that. Or you can you don't have to do that. You can also explore different opportunities for different point values that you get donated to you. Unlike Dance Marathon, it is a free registration, and that also is completely optional. If you just want to go to the walk, that's great. There's unlimited spots for people to come to. I'd love to see everyone there. Again, it's going to be 9 a.m. at Snapdragon Stadium, and then that fundraising part is optional as well. So I hope to see everyone there on the 19th. And feel free to text me with any questions.
So we will update the point opportunities with that fundraising amount. So again, another way to earn half a point and fundraise for a great cause that is related. And then our last kind of upcoming event is our next GBM is on October 20th, and this will be all about study abroad. So this is a great one, and it will be led by Allie and Amelia, who have been abroad, unlike myself. Any questions on any upcoming events, past events? Yeah?
Is the resume workshop going to be filmed?
It's not going to be filmed,
Okay.
but we will send out the slides afterwards.
Okay.
So if you can't make it, no worries, we'll make sure you still get the information. And if you have any questions, Allie would be more than happy to answer them. Anything else? Okay, let's get into it. So, last thing. We are gonna start some Instagram takeovers soon, so make sure you're following us. But basically, we have contacted various FPTO alumni that are current student physical therapists at different programs across the country. And they will be kind of taking us through a day in their life and taking questions. So if you're interested in going to PT school, as I'm sure you are if you're here, but especially ones across the country, because I know often here, sometimes we feel like we only get to hear from the SDSU program, but we're really trying to reach out to all of our alumni that are in different spots. So also, if you know someone that maybe would want to do this or someone you would want to hear from, feel free to contact myself or Sydney, and we'd be happy to get in contact with them. So keep an eye on that. Anyways, I keep having more announcements. Before we get started, for those of you who don't know, October 1st was kind of a big deadline for most PT programs. So for all of my people in the room that applied, give yourself a pat on the back. Let's get a big round of applause for them. That was a lot. Yeah, so you should be so proud of yourself. It's done for the most part. Yeah, that's the way you're doing now. Okay. All right, so today we're going to be covering one of the biggest questions that we get asked in our membership intake, and that is, how do you create a well-rounded application? How do I make my application strong? And the way I wanted to cover this today is to use the sections of PTCAS as a roadmap. So this is not a guide to filling out PTCAS, but this is simply giving you the information you need that you can keep in mind throughout your time in your undergrad. So quickly, what is PTCAS? It is the centralized application program for most DPT schools. I say most, at this point, I believe almost all, if not all, California schools are now in PTCAS, but this is the first year that SDSU DPT actually joined PTCAS. So you'll see some of those few outliers, but generally speaking, this is how you are going to be applying. If you applied to colleges other than the CSUs, you might remember the Common App. It's kind of like that. So it's like a Common App for PT schools. So again, we're going to be exploring that and how we can work on our application. So I know that this might seem really far off to some of you, but I really do think this is relevant. As a freshman, a sophomore, and a junior, you can work on building up your future applications. And keeping the sections in mind can help you set goals and participate in things that will make your application well-rounded. And then of course, PTCAS opens mid-June of that application cycle, and then it's time to fill it out. So if you're not taking a gap year, it'll be opening between your junior and senior year, that mid-June. So holistic review is a word that floats around a lot of PT programs, and it's generally what is used to evaluate your application. Can anyone tell me what might be included in holistic review? Just shout it out. No one has any ideas?
Grades.
Yeah, what else?
Observation hours.
Great. What else? Is that the only thing they look at? What else do they look at?
You as a person.
You as a person. What does that entail? How can you show yourself as a person?
Essays.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, big ones. So the kind of big ones that I said are academics, so like test scores, GPA, letters of rec, your essays, and then your experiences or your hours, anything you do outside of the classroom that makes you a person and not just a student. Yeah. And then for certain circumstances, they do consider personal circumstances that might be influential to your application. We'll talk about that a little bit more too. So these are the sections of PTCAS. I'm sorry I got stretched out a little bit more. We're gonna focus on the first three and I'm gonna kind of explain them to you. The program materials one is basically just the supplemental essays for the schools, and the schools being like, have you applied here before? So we're not gonna worry about that right now. I'm just gonna point some things out to you guys so you can keep them in mind through your pre-PT journey. So the first section is the personal information section. This one's pretty straightforward, asks you your demographics, things like that. But the biggest thing I wanted to point out is that it does have a holistic review aspect called economic, educational, or environmental factors. And I kind of listed the 4 things that they ask you about. So they might ask you about a family situation, childhood residency, if you attended a California high school, and then there's something called a disadvantaged applicant consideration. So these are all things you can look up on your own as well, but they do consider these things. If you do consider yourself having grown up in a hard family situation, or anything that could potentially consider yourself a disadvantaged applicant, maybe you went to a high school that was historically underfunded. Things like that can be taken into consideration, and they're all used as context as to who you are as a person. So they can't hurt you, they can only help you, and it gives them a better sense of where you've come from and where you'd like to go. So that was kind of the main thing on personal information. We're gonna jump to academic history. So academic history, you're gonna put in basically your transcripts and your standardized tests, and then of course it asks you where you went to college. So the biggest thing here is GPA, and I know we hear it a lot, keep your grades up, but what does that actually mean? Generally speaking, most schools require a minimum of a 3.0. There are a few that I've seen that go to 2 or 2.5, but generally speaking, 3.0 is the bottom of where you wanna be. And then a lot of schools recommend a 3.5 minimum. Again, I've seen that change, and a recommendation is truly a recommendation. And we'll get into that later, but it's not a hard ceiling, but just some numbers for you to keep in mind as you're going about your education. But there are some considerations within GPA, it's not just a number. There are different GPAs, and I will show you this in the next slide, that get calculated. So your overall, your science GPA, your prereq GPA, they're all different, and they can see all of those. And then growth. So maybe you really struggled your freshman year of college. Your high school experience was very different than your time in your undergrad, and it was an adjustment for you, and your GPA was lower. If they see growth, they see that you have worked towards improvement. And that can say a lot about you without even having to put any words to it. And then the last thing is GPA context. So this can come from letters of rec, personal statements, and that personal information section we're talking about. Maybe you were having a hard time having to help a sick family member and your GPA took a hit because of that. These are all things that the schools want to be aware of. They want to know you as a person, not just you as a number. So this is what it looks like after you have submitted an application. I just took this screenshot from one of my completed applications. As you can see, I did take one class at community college. If you are a transfer student, you will kind of have more things listed under your community college, but that's what that Foothill College one is there. And then next to all of these, there was a GPA. I just obviously didn't show that. But you know, they can see, they can look for growth here, right? From freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. They can look at your science and math, your overall GPA, your GPA per college you attended. So they're all kind of different ways to tell a story as to who you are in that sense. And then the last kind of piece in this section is test scores. So most schools that require the GRE, that is the Graduate Records Examination, they generally recommend about a minimum of 150 on the verbal and quant sections, and then a writing score of 4.0. We're gonna do a deeper dive on the GRE in the spring because that's a more common time for people to take it, but just something to keep in mind. Basically, it's kind of like the SAT all over again. I hate to say it, but that is, again, just a recommendation, something to keep in mind. It is not a hard and fast rule. If you were in the club last semester, you know there have been a number of applicants who have been successful in getting into schools that didn't meet this recommended minimum. So just food for thought. And then the last thing I wanted to point out are AP classes. So some schools do accept them, but if they do, they generally count as credit. And what this means is that they will not count towards your GPA. So some advice that I had been given from some DPT directors is like, if you have a lot of AP credits that you are applying to your GPA and your GPA is not as high, you might want to consider retaking these classes at the college level to earn a grade that can buffer your GPA. Because chances are if you passed the AP test, you did well enough on it to get credit that you're still pretty strong in the subject. And so if your GPA is lower, you'll probably get a higher grade in that class if you choose to retake it. And again, it can buffer out your GPA. So just food for thought, and again, keep an eye on those programs to see whether or not they accept them. You might have to retake it anyways. Really depends on the program. I'm also happy to talk more about that afterwards. I had a little bit of an issue with this myself, understanding who did and who didn't take AP credits. So just keep that in mind. Next, we're going to move on to supporting information. This is kind of the biggest part that has things that you can control right now. So what's really going to make up your application? It's most directly in your control. So the first thing is, I'm going to start with observation hours. It'll first just ask you some experience details. This is as if you're going to put one in, so we're going to put one in together. So paid volunteer, the experience type, again, like where you did it, and then who you shadowed. Generally, schools do not accept observation hours that were done under anything but a licensed physical therapist. You can do a physical therapist and a physical therapy assistant. This one, if it's just a PTA, tends to get a little more dicey, and you don't really want to be putting other. Unless you happen to see additional healthcare providers within that same setting, you want to make sure there is a PT there. Shadowing OT alone, for example, generally does not count. I don't see many programs where that is considered part of it. You can include it, but it won't count towards your PT observation hours. So then the next thing it'll ask you is about the setting. So there's kind of 3 categories here. And on the side here, you'll be able to put in how many hours you've done. So for each of these. So for example, I did an inpatient rotation experience at Sharp Memorial Hospital, but I did 2 different settings. I did acute care and I did rehabilitation. So I was able to put like 20 hours here and 20 hours here. So I wasn't all grouped under inpatient as a whole. You could kind of divide it in between. Then we have outpatient settings. Most of you, if you work in an outpatient ortho clinic, will likely be going with that top one, freestanding PT or hospital clinic. But there's some other ones in there too. And then some other non-clinical settings. Again, these ones you want to be maybe slightly more wary of. A lot of schools do not accept attending PT sessions as a patient or attending with a family member as something that will count towards this. So again, just something to keep in mind. If you are attending PT sessions with a family member, you might want to talk to that PT more directly and be like, hey, can I get direct observation hours through you? Or if they're willing to approve it as such, because that just gets a little dicey. And of course, room for other if you have some extenuating circumstance, something special. And then the last thing that you'll get to put is the patient diagnoses. So this is nice because I know I worked in an outpatient ortho clinic that did general orthopedic and also aquatics. So I didn't have to separate those. Under my hours, I was just able to check those boxes and we were all good to go. So that's kind of how your observation hours get put in. But then here's the big question is like how, what, when, why. So quantity-wise, most schools you will see require a minimum of 50 hours. Like that is the bottom floor I've seen. Yeah, I haven't seen too much that's lower than 50. There are a few, but just something to keep in mind. The FPTO recommendation, just something to keep in mind as well, is we recommend doing a minimum of 150 hours. And it seems like a lot, but when you're actually going through the process of it, that's like maybe a summer or two of observation hours if you're doing it full time. So it's really not too bad. The reason we say this is because this is generally the highest ceiling that we have seen for PT schools. So I haven't seen too many schools that go over a minimum of 150, so it's a very, very safe bet. In terms of where you do them, the quality of them, most schools, again, recommend 2 or more settings. This isn't always a hard and fast rule, but it can be, so something to keep in mind. And some do require inpatient. So again, our recommendation, more settings is never a bad thing, and we'll talk about why in a second. But get inpatient hours if you can, just to have your bases covered. So again, the more the merrier, and we'll explain why in a second. The reason that these matter, and this is coming directly from what I've heard from program directors, I want to make that very clear. PT is so versatile, it's not just outpatient orthopedics. A lot of us in this room probably got into physical therapy because we were treated in an outpatient orthopedic setting. But that's not all that physical therapists do. It's important to really make sure that you're interested in the profession as a whole and not just one aspect of it, because even if you don't want to do something when you are practicing, you will have to do it in school, and you might have to do a clinical rotation in it. So you don't want to be suffering through that. You want to enjoy it. And then it gives perspective as to what being a PT is actually like, the good, the bad, everything in between. You've probably heard a lot of the PTs you've shadowed say like documentation is the death of me. I get a lot of complaints about that. So is that something that is worth it for you? Are you like, I can deal with this documentation because I am passionate about physical therapy? So again, food for thought. But the biggest point is that PT schools want to know that you're actually interested in physical therapy, that you know what you're getting yourself into, and that you will complete the program. This is something that I've heard a lot. They don't want to admit someone that isn't sure what they want to do and is going to not graduate the program. Because first of all, they care about you, and that means that you could be taking a spot from someone who would have completed the program. And then of course, they also kind of care about their numbers to some extent, right? They want to have a 100% graduation percentage there. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the experiences section. When you go to add an experience, you can group them by different types. And experiences are just everything that you do outside of the classroom. We recommend inputting stuff from high school, so you can consider building your application on what you've done in high school. Reason being, some schools will care about it, some schools won't, but it ultimately can't hurt you. If they choose to ignore it, they choose to ignore it. It's okay. So as you can see, employment, extracurricular activities, research, and volunteer. We'll break those down really quick. So employment, again, all paid employment starting from high school. You can include aid jobs here. In fact, you should. But just keep in mind, you don't need to list out your aid duties. This was something that we hear a lot from. I think Dr. Rao says this a lot. They know what an aid does. You can put one sentence like, I was an aid at an outpatient orthopedic clinic. Maybe I did some front desk too. Keep it brief. They already saw it in your experiences section, but if it was paid, you do want to put it there as well. Extracurricular activities, think like sports, performing arts, club memberships, like this really cool one, all things you would put there. Research, the big misconception with this is that people will put in for research when they were a participant. That does not count. You need to be the one actually conducting the research to some capacity or assisting with the research. So if you were a subject, that could go in volunteering. But use your best judgment there, because if you participated in a 1-hour research study once, like it could count as volunteering, but think about how much merit that holds. So you could put it, you could not. And then lastly, volunteer, unpaid roles where you did things. So if you were an observer for your hours, it does not go in volunteer. If you just sat there and essentially were fly on the wall, that doesn't really count as volunteer. If you were actively cleaning tables, that is something where you could count it as volunteering.
Another thing here, anything community service related, of course, and leadership positions would be a great opportunity to put that in there. And then of course we have the achievements section. These are the options that will drop down when you're adding them. You can think college scholarships, dean's list, service awards, academic awards, extracurricular awards. If something has the word award in it, just put it on there. I got like an excellence in dance award in high school, and I was like, I don't think they care, but why not, right? Can't hurt. Worst case, they just choose to ignore. And then the last piece in this section that we're going to talk about is licenses and certifications. Most of you in this room probably have a CPR or AED or basic life-saving certification through like the American Heart Association or American Red Cross. Definitely list this. Most, if not all, schools require a valid CPR certification by the time you start. So make sure that you have this, and you will probably need it for aid jobs anyways. So good to keep that fresh and valid. And then there is a certification that you get in ENS 305 called like CT or City Biomedical Researchers. So it's a certification, it counts, throw it in there. Definitely cannot hurt you, especially if your school is going to be involved in research. Just a nice thing to say that you have. And then anything else, think personal trainer, maybe you did a first aid course, maybe you're an EMT, a medical assistant. Any other trainings you've done where you've gotten a certificate and it has a number that you can trace back, you can definitely put that in there. All right, so we are actually just kind of getting to the end here. Just some other tips. Start researching the schools that you might want to apply to and look at what they emphasize. And think about how you can incorporate this into yourself. For example, if you are potentially interested in a school that emphasizes that they do a lot of research, it could be a good idea to start looking into research. And worst case scenario, you decide not to apply to that school, having research is still a great thing. So even though your preferences might change, looking at the schools you're interested in, even just a few that you could be interested in the moment, seeing what they emphasize, what they look for in an applicant, can help you start building up your application. And it can help you understand maybe too, if you want to apply to that school. The school emphasizes research, you try it, and you really don't like it, maybe that's not the program for you. Again, just all things to start thinking about, some food for thought. Another one, keep a running list of impactful or meaningful opportunities that you have, either within a PT health setting or something else that's meaningful, maybe like a leadership role. I really wish I had this. That's why I'm giving it to you now. These can come in handy for essays and interviews later down the road. And it's also gonna help you keep your why in mind. If you had a really impactful experience with a patient in a certain setting, maybe it inspires you to do more within that setting. And that's something that you can talk about within your application. Something that, again, builds your character and gives them a more holistic sense of you. But at the minimum, it will help with your essays, I promise. And if you don't know, I had to ask my parents when the time came to. I was like, what do you know about me that I'm forgetting? So if you're able to have that list in front of you, it's really, really helpful, because sometimes it's scary to ask people, what do you know about me? I don't know me. So last big tip here, filling out each section is good, but it's only good if it's genuinely true to you. I think that there is a lot of pressure to do a lot. But really, if you do a lot and you don't do it well, think about it. What's the point, right? It might look like you are trying to stretch yourself to fill out an application. If you can do a lot and you do it well, great. But at the end of the day, doing less well is better than doing more unwell, because it's genuine. You should be doing these things because you genuinely are excited about them. You genuinely care about them. That's why we're all in this room, right? We're genuinely excited about PT. So if the experiences that you're doing, you're just doing them for the sake of adding them to an application, putting them on a resume, they're not gonna be the ones that fulfill you. And ultimately, the reason we all want to be physical therapists is because we want a career that's fulfilling. I don't think anyone came into this for the money. I'm gonna be so real, right? So think about that in the context of your future. Start doing what you love now. Make it a point, and that will show. Because if you do what you love, you can talk about what you love. Your passion is just gonna come through your entire application. I truly, truly cannot stress this enough. This is something I have heard a lot of. It's okay to not be involved in a million things, right? We give you so many opportunities, and none of it is pressure to participate in any of them. They're just opportunities. So take them as they are just opportunities. So some key takeaways. Schools are looking for a mixed basket. There isn't one perfect candidate, and this truly
could not be any closer to the truth. We know people that got in that didn't have the recommended GRE score, that didn't have the recommended GPA, that were below the average GPA or above the average GPA. They do not want a bunch of the same people. That would be boring. So they are looking for a mixed basket. With that, comparison is truly unhelpful, and you will never be the person next to you. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, right? I don't want to be exactly like Allie, because then, dang, they're gonna have to choose between Allie and Allie. And what do you pick, Allie? I don't know. So you truly will never be the person next to you. And if you are competing to be the person next to you, you are probably going to lead yourself to a path that is just not helpful in the end. You're not going to like what you're doing, because I'm never going to have the exact same interests as the person next to me. So truly, truly do not compare yourself. Do what you do and do it well. Grow on yourself. So again, be the best version of you. That is truly what counts at the end of the day. There is no right or wrong way to do this. Well, there is. The right way to do it is how you want to do it. And then FBTO is here for you throughout all of this. You really got this. And I know that this can seem like a really overwhelming process, and I just spit a lot of information at you really fast. But genuinely, I can tell you without a doubt that I've relied on so many people in this room and people that have left this room and graduated. We truly are a community, and we're here to answer your questions, to help each other, and to build each other up. I said this at the beginning of the year: if I do one thing, I hope that I made you feel welcomed and supported, because that is the minimum I can do as president of this organization. So I'll get off my soapbox. Those are kind of the big things that we look for within the PTCAS application. So again, not a guide to filling it out, but something you can keep in mind. Most schools will be viewing your application from this lens of PTCAS. So keeping all of this in mind will be helpful to help build up your application. So I know that was a lot of information. These slides will be sent out at the end. And that is actually all we have for meeting today, keeping it a little short. Feel free to hang back. Any questions, we are happy to